Hello, beautiful homemakers. We are in Chapter 16 of the 1922 original Fascinating Womanhood pamphlets. We are right in the middle of the chapter. You will definitely need to listen to the last video to get caught up. This chapter is about removing the obstacles to marriage, and this subsection is called How to Shatter All Obstacles. When, however, the man is practically, on account of these other burdens, given up the idea of marriage, but still continues to indulge the girl's society, her course is more difficult than when he temporarily drops her, as we mentioned in the last video. The only thing she can do is to use the castle-in-the-air method, work up his enthusiasm and self-reliance, and someday, when he is particularly sanguine, he will not be ashamed to ask her to wait for him. By this time, it will be quite evident to the reader that the way romantic young people have of looking forward to a bright and glorious future, of building castles in the air day after day, and of confidently expecting to have the world at their feet in short order, is not without value. Although the average girl does not realize it, all this indulgence in daydreams is necessary to make the average young man brave and self-confident enough to undertake her support. The atmosphere of self-confidence, self-reliance, faith, enthusiasm, and prodigious self-esteem is often the only atmosphere in which such a romantic and unbusinesslike thing as a proposal is possible. And this is in caps. No matter what the objection that is standing in the man's way, it is only in this atmosphere that it can be overcome. For the sake of convenience, we have been calling the process of creating this atmosphere the castle-in-the-air method. It will have to be used constantly. So if you are sleeping with him, either before you're engaged or after, and you haven't yet set a marriage date, you're actually giving him no reason whatsoever to actually marry you. And so many women are caught in this trap. When money blocks the path. Sometimes a man appears to have no obligations toward dependent relatives, but has other obligations that are just as binding. For example, one young man had gone into debt about $2,000 in order to finish his college education. 3 years later, to his great disappointment, he has been unable to pay back even a part of this loan. He had been able to earn enough only to support himself, and he had little prospect of earning more in the immediate future. Now, this young man was very much interested in a certain girl, but he felt that it would be betraying the confidence of the man who had loaned him the money to get married before it had been repaid. The prospect of his being able to repay the loan was slim enough without having a wife to support. Here was an obstacle to getting married that was practically impossible to overcome except by applying the castle-in-the-air method, reviving his enthusiasm until he finally feels that his future success is so sure that he need not be afraid to ask the girl to wait for him. And if you or your future husband has horrific student loan debt, that is an obstacle to marriage. If a man wants to marry you and you have debt, he's not going to want to take that on. And if you want to marry a man who has tons of debt, are you going to want to work to pay off his debt? School loans are a terrible idea, and we've been sold on them. But guess what? There are ways to get through college without debt, such as doing your general education at Sophia online or attending Western Governors University, which is much cheaper. Also, look up completely free colleges. A man's secret obligations. It is almost impossible to enumerate the secret obligations a man may have which prevent his considering marriage. Among them, however, we must not overlook the possibility that he may be obligated to another girl. Quite frequently a man in a big city will be engaged to a girl back home. The engagement may be of such long standing that neither of them care for the other properly. They may not, indeed, have seen each other for a year or more. The engagement in the first place may have been a mistake, and the contemplation of marriage now a greater mistake still. Now, in novels, this situation is usually relieved by the girl back home falling in love with another man. But in real life, the girl back home is seldom so accommodating. Although she may not properly care for the young man, yet the fact that she has no hopes of getting another prevents her from breaking the engagement, especially when the young man himself is too honorable to express a desire for release. Here is an obstacle that is almost insurmountable. The young man waits and waits, hoping that something will occur to release him from his obligation, and the girl he desires wonders why he never asks her the all-important question. Her disappointment, however, is nothing compared to the misery of the young man. All that either of them can do, apparently, is to wait and hope. The girl, however, must be careful not to misjudge the man. I think this is not quite so common today as it was 100 years ago, and it's much easier to break off with someone. Of course, it's very important that you not marry the wrong person. And if a man has his eye on someone else, you don't want to marry him, obviously. You don't want to be second best in your marriage or have him dreaming of another woman while he's married to you. Much better to break off engagements when it's not a good fit. If you are engaged, but no date has been set, you need to express your desire. You need to say to him, I want to be married. We need to set the date. And if he still hems and haws, then you say, I want to be married. You don't. So I'm going to find a man who wants to marry me. And then you give him back his ring and you leave. He may or may not chase you, but you must leave. Men actually do like to chase, so if he does, then he will have to re-propose to you with the ring and a wedding date. If you are sleeping with him, you need to stop. Not sleeping together is usually enough of an ultimatum for the majority of men, though some men are very low testosterone, and that's a problem all on its own. The most important thing you need to do before marriage is pray. Pray to God for a man, for the man that God has for you. And if who you are currently engaged to isn't that man, ask God to help you break it off. Only marry a Christian. If your current boyfriend isn't a Christian, then you need to move on. Go to church and find a new man who will walk beside you in the Lord. So many women think that they can bring their boyfriend to Christ, and yeah, it occasionally happens, but the majority of the time it does not. The majority of the time, once you are married, he will fight you in your Christian walk. You need to be on the same page before marriage. So if you have been engaged for 2 years or more and he refuses to set the date, you should break off your engagement. Because he's got you in a counterfeit marriage. It's not real. And no other man is going to look at you while you have another man's ring on your finger. It is extremely unfair to you, and you need to let him go. Maybe then he will realize that he does want to marry you after all. Or he might be relieved. In that case, you should be relieved, even if heartbroken, because you don't want to marry a man who doesn't really love you. And it will allow another man who does love you to enter into your life. A broken engagement is not a shameful thing. It can be a very smart thing to do. Discovering the man's health. Another obstacle that is sometimes insurmountable is ill health. Many an apparently strong man is a victim of diabetes, heart trouble, or some other disorder. He may know there is a strain of insanity or some other hereditary disorder in the family blood. He therefore dares not marry for fear of bringing unhappiness upon the girl he loves. He knows that if his troubles should become acute, he will not be able to earn a living for himself, much less for a wife. A situation like this is tragic, because there is little prospect of escape for the man, while the poor girl does not even have the satisfaction of knowing that he cares for her. When a man fails to speak out, remember that he sometimes can't do as he pleases. Just this week I met a woman who had a wonderful character because she knowingly married and cared for her husband for 15 years, knowing that he had an absolutely debilitating neurological disorder. And if I described what they went through, you would be shocked. Horrible, horrible disease. And yet they did get married. They had 15 loving but difficult years together. They did not have children because he did not want to pass along this horrible disease that his mother, mother's brother, his grandmother, and now him, they all died from it. And so he said, no children. Instead, they took care of family members' children, helping to raise them. It takes a very special woman to marry a man with whom she knows she will not be able to raise children with, and who will not be able to work and care for her, but instead she'll be a full-time caregiver. He had never planned to marry, but she convinced him otherwise. Incredible woman. Should a girl wait? The difficulty in cases like this is that when the man fails to speak out, the girl has no means of knowing what the obstacle is and whether it is insurmountable or not. All she can do is to use the castle in the air method for a month or two. This failing, she can often bring matters to a head by accepting the attentions of other men and arousing the jealousy of the man she wants. In most cases, this will either cause him to speak out or drop out. If he speaks out, the girl can use her own judgment as to what to do next. If he drops out, she can usually conclude that there is an insurmountable obstacle to his marriage. If he neither speaks out nor drops out, but continues to show a marked interest in her, she can ordinarily surmise that the obstacle is insurmountable at present, but that he has hopes of getting around it later. She must then be patient and wait with him. Meantime, and this is in caps, remembering that under the spell of the stars some romantic evening, or under stress of the emotions aroused by a good moving picture or play, or some other occasion when cold reason is subdued and hope and tenderness are uppermost, he is likely to tell her the old story. So long as the man continues to show interest, he is likely to any minute or on any occasion to bring on the crisis. The girl, therefore, should continue giving him plenty of opportunity, even if he hesitates for months. Obstacles that prevent marriage, Group 2. We now turn from the obstacles which would prevent his proposing marriage to any girl and consider those which would prevent his proposing marriage to one girl in particular. It often happens that when there are no impediments to marriage in general, there is a great impediment to marriage with a particular girl. The lovely Priscilla. The first of these which will now be considered is diffidence, distrust of himself, or a sense of unworthiness or inferiority. We all know the story of John Alden and Priscilla. If you don't, you should look it up. John thought so much of Priscilla and so little of himself that he couldn't even hope that Priscilla would care for him. He considered Miles Standish so much a better man that the thought of rivaling him in Priscilla's affections was undreamed of. So far from proposing for himself was he, that he undertook in all seriousness to carry Miles Standish's proposal to her. Poor Priscilla, helpless before such diffidence, finally had to ask him, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John?" Now this situation is not so infrequent as one might suppose. The bravest and most self-possessed man loses his bravery and self-possession when in the presence of the girl he worships. If he is of the right stuff, he can't help feeling unworthy in the presence of this angelic creature. He hesitates to put his fate to the test for fear that he will be exiled altogether. And this is in caps. He may call on her a score of times with the intention of asking the momentous question, only to lose heart at the last moment and put it off until another time. Ezekiel's predicament. The average girl can usually tell when a man is in this predicament. She knows what the matter is when he hems and haws and turns hot under the collar, or when he acts like Zekel in Lowell's delightful poem. He stood a spell on one foot fust, then stood a spell on t'other, and on which one he felt the worst, he couldn't have told ye another. Okay. There is but one thing to do with such a man. Take pity on him and help him along, just as Priscilla did with John Alden. You may bank upon it that half the men who are married today did not propose without considerable help from the girl. Of course, this help cannot be given except when the girl positively knows that the man wants to speak and can't. The help must be given out of pity for the poor fellow's misery, and not out of boldness or impatience. Unless she knows he is in misery, she must not help him. How Holdie handled him. Let's examine how Holdie did the task in Lowell's poem. Oh dear. Says he, "I'd better call again." Says she, "Think likely, mister." That last word pricked him like a pin, and wall, he up and kissed her. When Ma Bimeby upon 'em slips, Holdie sot pale as ashes, all kin a smilin' round the lips, and trirry round the lashes. Okay. Holdie used what might be called the provocative method. She provoked or teased him into declaring himself. When he stiffly said that he would call again, she responded with equal stiffness and teasingly called him Mr., no doubt with a twinkle in her eye that let him know that she was aware of his difficulty and was laughing at his hesitation. Thus it suddenly dawned upon him that further beating around the bush was a foolish waste of time, that she already knew of and rejoiced in his affection. So, he up and kissed her. A formal proposal was wholly unnecessary. Holdie had taken pity upon him and helped him along. I hope men today aren't that bashful. The fine art of teasing. This provoking or teasing of a man is a fine art indeed. It shows the man that she knows his tenderness for her, that she knows she can take liberties with him. It shows him that it isn't necessary for him to tell her that he loves her, and that she has no objection to his affection for her. There are 1,000 ways of teasing, a different way with each different man, and for that reason we cannot detail them. In every case, it is a way of asking the man, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John?" without boldly putting the question into words. It is ladylike, modest, and irresistible. And that is key, because too many women are vicious in their teasing. It is ladylike, modest, and irresistible. Provoked until he feels like shaking the girl for playing with his tenderness for her, the man finds himself kissing her instead. When she then gasps, drops her eyes, and demurely waits in hushed expectancy for him to explain himself, what can the harassed man do but tell his story? And many times today, it is the girl who ends up making the move, leaning in towards him to let him know, "It's okay if you kiss me." Too proud to ask her. The next obstacle we shall consider is the man's pride. Perhaps the man can support a wife, but only in a modest way, and not at all in the way to which she is accustomed. He is too proud to ask her to accept a lower scale of living just for his sake. Even when the girl comes from a modest home, when she really would be maintaining her standard of living, pride sometimes prevents, because the man has a certain idea of the way his friends would expect him to maintain a household, and he is too proud to risk their criticism by starting out on a more modest scale. This obstacle is to be overcome in the same manner as any other economic obstacle, by using the castle in the air method until he asks you to wait for him. And then you do the things Bettina does in the book 1,000 Ways to Please a Husband, which is now set as a course on my channel, along with Secrets of Fascinating Womanhood. You have to let a man know that you're willing to live on less, that you are frugal, that you can be economical, that you won't drive him into debt, that you pay off your credit cards, that you don't have student debt, that you aren't a shopaholic, and that you're used to making do. What to do when his family objects. We now come to one of the most common obstacles of all, fear of the displeasure of his family. It is unfortunately true that, in most families, the marriage of the daughter is expected as a matter of course, but the marriage of the son, until a very mature age, is bitterly opposed. Even when the family does not oppose marriage in general, it does oppose the man's marriage to the particular girl he desires. Mothers especially are prone to believe that no girl in the world is quite good enough for their sons. They will therefore discover 1,000 faults in the poor girl whom the son wishes to marry, and will resist his desire with every resource available. To overcome this obstacle, the girl should first endeavor to win the affection and goodwill of the family. It is only in rare cases that this succeeds, however, and she must win him without this goodwill. This is not as difficult as first appears, because he usually resents the unfairness of the family's attitude toward the girl, and is indignant at the poor conception it has of the angelic perfection she really is. The active opposition of the family, therefore, often prompts him into action. But when the opposition of the family is passive, or when the active opposition fails to urge him into action, the girl's task is more difficult. The only thing the girl can do is to use the castle in the air method to enter into his plans, hopes, and ambitions so thoroughly and so sympathetically that he can't think of his bright future without her to share it. To be such an inspiration and comfort to him that he fears he can't live without her. Then his desire will sweep aside all obstacles of whatsoever nature. Occasionally there may be obstacles that you may be able to overcome right now. Maybe something as simple as learning formal manners, or being more genteel and agreeable to fitting in with his family's dynamics when you're around them. Or perhaps you will even have to learn how to speak up for yourself and not get run over in his family. But chances are his love for you will override any objections, just like in the movies. And sometimes you need to be aware that it won't matter who the woman is. It's not you at all. Sometimes there's people in the family who will be against whomever the man chooses, for selfish reasons of their own. A few that come to my mind are they want him to remain single because it benefits them. They want him to marry someone else that they like, or they want his financial support to go to them and not to you. They want to inherit what his future children would inherit. They're afraid a wife would take him away from the family circle, etc. Does the lover really say, "Will you marry me?" There are innumerable other obstacles to marriage that make postponement necessary, such as ambition, fear of the humiliation of a refusal, fear of the contempt of his social circle when he marries beneath it, the possibility of marrying a girl with wealth, doubt whether the girl's liking for him is permanent, etc. In every case, however, the method of overcoming the obstacle is pretty much the same, either increasing the desire until it naturally sweeps aside all thought of opposition or objection, or convincing him that time will shortly remove the obstacle and that he can, with safety, ask the girl to wait for him. It is only rarely that a man asks a girl, "Will you marry me?" In 99 cases out of 100, he asks, "Will you marry me when?" When his salary is raised, or his education is complete, or his debts are paid off, or he gets another job, or his future is safely settled, or his dreams have come true. He never thinks he is ready to marry, and he usually thinks it is wrong to propose until he is ready. The girl must convince him that he will be ready at a certain definite time within 2 or 3 years to make him so sure of it that it is the most natural thing in the world for him to ask her to wait for him. After the engagement, it should prove an easy matter to shorten the waiting period. Next time we will read Inspiring the Proposal.